In the next break, we will present to you a bunch of inconvenient truths about the environment that maybe you didn't know. We'll be right back after this. America's Morning Show with Quinn and Rose. Okay, now here, except in Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton, when it's America's evening show. Anyway, here are some facts that you're not going to find in your Sierra Club newsletter. These were taken from an article in the globeandmail.com, which I believe is a Canadian newspaper, and the article's by Neil Reynolds, and I'm extracting this from someone who at politicalnightmare.com who blogged on this particular article. Some notes of interest, okay? First of all, if you want to be a green nation, get rich. Because wealth is what allows a nation to clean up after itself. Disposable, non-essential wealth. California's wineries put more volatile organic compounds into the atmosphere than California's cars. This, according to the EPA. For those of you who don't know, the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, owns 2 vineyard parcels totaling over 24 acres in Napa Valley. From 1990 through 2004, figures from the United Nations show increases in greenhouse gases as follows. The United States, 13.3%. Canada, 24.2%. Spain, 44.7%. Portugal, 36.7%. Ireland, 26.6%. Greece, 25.8%. Finland, 21.5%. Austria, 16.5%. Where's France? France decreased by 1.9%, but that's an amazingly anemic number when you consider that they get 80% of their electricity from nuclear. So why do they keep pushing Kyoto? Because they want to tax all of the imports that go into their country from non-Kyoto nations, which would be, of course, us. But what about hydrocarbon emissions? Surely the U.S. is doing awful in that category, right? Wrong. Consider the unilateral reduction in hydrocarbon emissions from cars and trucks in the U.S. in the past 40 years. In the 1960s, these emissions averaged 10.2 grams per mile. In the 70s, 1.8 grams per mile. In the 80s, 0.4 grams per mile. And according to the EPA, in 2004, they now average 0.2 grams per mile. We have essentially done it. We've cleaned up the environment. There's nothing left for these weenies to do but complain about something that's not a pollutant, CO2. Hydrocarbon emissions, a source of particulates found in air pollution, have fallen in 40 years by 99.3%. That can't be right. I mean, with all the traffic today, so many more cars on the road. Well, according to the index of leading environmental indicators, it's absolutely true. Oh, one more thing from the same page of the same report. It is important to note that these emission rates per mile are not an average for the whole auto fleet, but apply to all makes and models uniformly. In other words, your SUV is not polluting more. It is a myth. Let us say that again. The claim that your SUV pollutes more is a crock. According to a 2006 environmental report by 2 think tanks, the San Francisco-based Pacific Research Institute and the Washington-based American Enterprise Institute, it's all mythology. SUVs have produced the same volatile emissions as regular cars since the 1996 model year. They have produced the same nitrogen oxide emissions as regular cars since 2001. Average vehicle emissions for cars and SUVs are falling 10% a year. There you have it, folks. And he concludes by saying, I don't claim to be an expert on environmental matters, but it seems to me we here in America have more will, more resources, and more freedom to do the things that need to be done. And more wealth, I would add, because wealth is good, it's not evil. There is no point at which wealth becomes evil unless it is stolen by force. The only people who do that are robbers and bureaucrats. I don't believe we need to sign a treaty with other nations that will limit us economically. With all the talk about global warming, greenhouse gas emissions are the subject of much debate and, frankly, much paranoia from the enviro-weenies and Al Gore. It appears to me that we are limiting ourselves and producing far better results than those of us who cry for us to sign the treaty. And We are doing it while producing more wealth and creating more jobs than those in Europe. Well, that's part of the problem. Europe is a welfare state. Europe is a welfare state. It is a parasite on every state that touches its borders. The Czech Republic, where capitalism is running rampant, I was there personally, I saw it, will soon be, I believe in 2011, sucked in by the parasite, and they'll suck that body dry too, because the European welfare state cannot be sustained without new blood. It cannot create the wealth that it needs to sustain itself. So like an amoeba, it must spread and spread and spread until there is no more wealth. But the bottom line is drive your SUV and enjoy it, because it's not polluting any more than any other automobile, and we've essentially cleaned up the planet. The job is, for all intents and purposes, the job is done. It's time. The polar bears are not dying. The polar bears are not drowning. The animals are not